What's up, everyone? I'm kind of sad I missed the selfie. That was tough. Also, I love that we're back-to-back Minnesota speakers. This is probably the coolest thing anyone from Minnesota has ever done. So we're doing well today. Shout out to Minnesota. So my name is Kyle Hagge. I am the Director of Community at Morning Brew. If you do not know who Morning Brew is, I'll set the record straight. We're not a coffee company, which is unfortunate because that's probably what everyone wants right now. It's early in the morning. But we are actually a digital media company, and we started with just a single newsletter, and we've thus expanded since then. And so who would have thought sending emails can make you a lot of money? But here we are. It's been a really fun journey. So to tell you a little bit more about myself, before we get into the tactics, we've learned from Morning Brew Learning, which is our newest business unit, really focused on the community side of things. So as I mentioned, my name's Kyle Hagge. You heard that I'm from Minnesota originally. But I've had a pretty winding career, and I would consider myself a bit of a generalist. So I've worked for the Housing Authority for the city of Milwaukee. I've done innovation at Marquette University. I had my own digital media community events company in Milwaukee. I saw someone actually from Milwaukee, if Angela's in the room, I'm not sure, but yes, what's up, Angela? I did some stuff for Ballot Ready, like in the civic tech space, and then I went through an accelerator myself for a startup. And why I bring this up is, one, hopefully to establish some credibility, but two, I think there's actually a lesson to be learned here about community, which is I think the best community managers, the people working in community that operate the best, often have a ton of disparate experiences because they can relate to and connect with so many different people inside of their respective communities. And so finding someone or working yourself and to get kind of these disparate experiences, I think makes you a lot more relatable. Probably the most impactful experience I had when it comes to community was my time in AmeriCorps. It was what I did right out of college. I worked 2 years at Milwaukee High School of the Arts, helping students get to and through college. And so I learned so much about community, and I think if you can get 40 kids to stay after school to care about the Pythagorean theorem, like you can do anything after that. And so I learned a ton of lessons about community there. The last thing I'll say about this slide is I think this is helpful for anyone, even operating outside of community for your career, is to think about your personal monopoly. And so I've always loved community, I've always loved digital media, and I've always loved innovation. And those are three things. I'm not the best at any of those things individually or near the top. But I think if you find a position that allows you to stack three things that you really love, that you feel passionate about, and you can put yourself in an environment where you're using those three things, you do become very, very valuable. And you stop trying to be the best, and you start being the only one with your experiences that are leveraged in a really strong way. So that's a little bit about me. Now a little bit more about Morning Brew. As I mentioned, we're a digital media company. We started with a single newsletter, but so far, or since then, we've expanded to pretty much everything under the sun. So we have newsletters, podcasts, social media, events, branded content, but our newest product offering, our newest business unit is actually our education division. I helped start it. It was the first paid product at Morning Brew about 2.5 years ago. And what I want to talk about is audience versus community, and then really the tactics we've learned from building Morning Brew Learning, building the first community product at Morning Brew in the 2.5 years we've been doing it. And so we transitioned from mainly an audience business, which is a newsletter, and we added a community business, which are these education courses, which are Morning Brew Learning. The reason I bring this up, it's pretty intuitive, but I think it's very important to understand, are you building something for an audience, or are you building something for a community? And I would argue it's two very different strategies you have to deploy to resonate with your customers, to make money. You need to understand, am I building an audience-based product or am I building a community-based product? And oftentimes building an audience-based product first is a lot easier. And so this might seem intuitive, but how I'm gonna define audience versus community for the rest of this presentation is audience is one to many. So Morning Brew, the newsletter, for example, goes out to about 5 million people every day. That's an audience-based product. We have one product offering, it goes to many people, and the people that receive it aren't in contact with each other. They're really just in contact with Morning Brew. It is one to many. For community, I define that as many to many, where the people that are experiencing your product not only get to learn from you or experience with you, but they're experiencing it with other people experiencing the product. It is many to many. This does not mean that audiences are worse. I think audiences are actually a lot easier to build, and in some ways a lot easier to monetize. But again, it's very important to understand what you're trying to build for. Is this an audience product or is this a community product? I see a lot of people say, oh, we have a great community on social media. Maybe they're using that definition differently than I am, but I would say that's an audience. It is typically one to many, and you're going to use different strategies and tactics for that. So why build a community-based product? The one thing I see a lot of junior community people do is they talk about community in a way that doesn't reinforce ROI or doesn't actually talk about, hey, this is going to make us money. I think oftentimes we shy away in the community space from being like, this is part of a business, we need to make money, and there needs to generate an ROI on the investment. So I think you're going to be a lot more successful in rolling out any kind of community products at your company if you can talk about all the great benefits of community and you can articulate how this is going to make the company money and how this is going to be something sustainable to invest in. If you believe that community is going to have impact, you want it to exist for a long time. Part of that is making sure it is sustainable. So talking about it generating additional revenue. Morning Brew is a perfect example of this, where we had our newsletter, and it was all ad-based. Every single one of our products, actually, about 99% of our revenue before we started Morning Brew Learning, was all ad-based. We've now generated additional revenue because of a community product, where typically one subscriber to the daily is about like $50 of lifetime value. Someone is going to have to fact check me on that, and if anyone at Morning Brew is listening, I apologize if I got that wrong. But someone we've had in our community pay like $3,000, $4,000 to take our courses. And so that is a huge opportunity for people to go deeper with us, for us to capture more value, and for us to deliver more value to our customers. So it is generating revenue. The second thing is it's creating brand evangelists. When you have people that get to experience Morning Brew on a deeper way, they fall in love with the product. Now they're much more likely to refer their friends to all of our suites of products, and they really feel like they have a strong connection to the product. The third thing is it helps you find pain points faster, which is nice, but also I get emails all the time from people that have taken our courses like, hey, love the course. This has nothing to do with the course, but like there's a typo in this newsletter. Could you like talk to someone who's writing this? So because you have that connection, it allows you to kind of surface these pain points faster. I mentioned increasing the lifetime value of your customers. You have a community product. You can go deeper. You can charge more. You can capture more value, which is great. It also displays social proof. We have people take our courses, and they post about it on LinkedIn or on Twitter, or tell their friends about how great of this experience it was. It kind of creates this social proof. Hey, Morning Brew is a cool company. They're delivering great experiences. And then lastly, it makes the product feel more human. I think one of the coolest parts for myself is getting to meet readers of Morning Brew, like in person or virtually through our courses. And it really makes the readers feel more human, but I also think it makes Morning Brew feel more human. You're much less likely to subscribe to a newsletter when you know the faces behind it, when you feel like they actually are good people, they really care about your success and your career. And so there's a ton of benefits to doing community. Obviously, I think this room is sold because you're at the Community Summit. So let's talk about tactics for building Morning Brew Learning. Again, Morning Brew Learning, it's the newest business unit at Morning Brew. Since we launched about 2.5 years ago, we've put about 4,000 professionals through our programs. We've done anywhere from kind of 1-hour workshops to 8-week educational experiences. We've also partnered with tons of businesses to do trainings for their companies and kind of build community around their employees. And again, we've generated additional revenue for the company. So my first piece of advice, don't just gather, but actually help solve a problem. I think that community has probably become the biggest buzzword in a while, which has helped probably everyone in this room, myself included. But I do think that people are getting sick of every time they interface with almost any brand or any product, there is some follow-up that's like, join our community. Like, you will buy a pair of socks, and you get an email like, would you like to join our exclusive sock community? I wouldn't. That's the last thing I really want to do. And what I think this hypothetical sock community is getting wrong is we've now just believed that community is just about gathering people. Community is so much more than taking your existing audience and putting them in a Slack channel or putting them on Circle. The best communities, the communities that are going to be sustainable and are going to thrive, help the people in the community actually solve a problem. And so you have to be very thoughtful about what is the persona that we're serving with our existing audience product or our existing product. So for Morning Brew, our persona, people that read our newsletters, they're business professionals, they tend to be millennial, they really want to accelerate their careers, they're curious about what's going on in the world, and they might read HR Brew or Marketing Brew. So we know what industry they're in, and if you're reading Marketing Brew, you want to become a better marketer. So what problem does this persona face? Well, they want to grow in their career, and we're helping them solve that problem with our newsletters by providing them information and context. But the other thing they might want to do is become better at their job through learning a skill or learning a competency. Maybe they're a new manager. How do we help them solve that problem? And then we thought, okay, does a community solution help them solve that problem? And in this case, it does. So we've built a whole host of courses that are going to give you marketing skills if you're a marketer, are going to give you new manager skills if you want to become the best new manager possible, are going to give you strategy and operations skills, et cetera. And then what experiences do you have to build around those to help them solve those goals? So I would make sure you're not just gathering people, but you're helping them solve a problem. That's what customers want. So some tactics for community design. First is, tech is on the margins. This is also a kind of a pet peeve of mine. I think people are so focused on using the newest technology just because it's new and because it's novel. And they want to have like the coolest events platform that has all these awesome features, but they're not really thinking about the quality of experience that your customer, your community member is going to have. I would actually argue that for most events, Zoom is like hands down the best. It's ubiquitous. Everyone understands how to use it. And so when people go to an event on Zoom, they can actually focus on the event, the speaker, the people they're talking to, and not trying to figure out like where they are in the metaverse and like how to sit in this virtual chair. And so really thinking about the tech doesn't matter. Focus on the quality of experience first. And oftentimes like the quote unquote lamest platforms are the best, particularly if in your community you have people that aren't, super into tech. They might not even know how to operate some of the latest platforms. Use something that is ubiquitous that helps solve the problem. The second piece of advice, tactic, is community managers are architects and not stars. This is one of my favorite metaphors, and really viewing yourself as an architect, that you are designing the community experience and you are not the star of the show. I think the best community managers almost tend to blend into the background. They've done so much work up front to design a great experience that the community can live on its own. It's an emergent thing. The members are helping grow it, and you've just created the right constraints to put yourself in a great spot. And so like an architect, when you walk into a building like the theater, you should have clear wayfinding. Where is the restroom? What am I supposed to be doing here? What are the principles of this place? Where do I go to connect with people? All of that should be present in your community, and really putting a lot of time up front into that to make it perfect. And so we like to think of this as like 4 steps. There's an onboarding process, an engagement process, a subgroup, and a feedback. I'm going to talk about all of these in a little more depth, but the subgroup thing is super, super important. I think as community scales, you get like millions of members or thousands of members. It's really easy to feel like, I can't possibly meet 1,000 people. What am I doing in this community? Even if you think back to your college experience, if you went to college, you probably didn't meet everyone at your school, but you had maybe 5 or 10 people you really connected with, and that deep connection with those people kind of had a halo effect. You either loved your school if you liked those 10 people, or maybe you transferred like myself to University of Minnesota if you didn't. And so finding a way to niche down your community, if you have thousands of members, how is someone going to find 5 people that they really need to connect with? If you can do that and you can design that experience, you're going to be very successful as a community manager. And we do this kind of right away. We establish principles, we build a culture, we create an environment, we try to create as much clarity as possible for people that are coming into the community. The next tactic is friction is actually really good. I think when I think of community, I think of intentional, relational, and personal. That's kind of what makes community special. And unfortunately, those 3 things are pretty much the antithesis of scale. And if you want something to be sustainable, it has to typically be scalable. And so there is this tension in the community space of being human, but also trying to scale and trying to automate certain things. And so my advice is, don't automate everything. Don't automate the humanity out of your community, because that's what people are coming there for. And so sit and think about, like, what are the really key touch points, the key milestones that people are going to have in your community, and safeguard those from automation. It makes a world of difference. An example, every person that applied to our original program, I actually made a personal video for. This did kind of probably create long-term cornea damage for me, staring at a ring light for like 3 hours, but it was so special. Like, I made a personal video for about 150 people. I was literally up to like 3 a.m. in my Milwaukee apartment at the time. But when people got those, and we even surveyed people after, why did you join? Why did you like pay us money to give you this experience? So many of them cited, like, it actually felt like you read my application and that you cared. And that, like, the fact that you made a video, I knew the experience was going to be so amazing because you're already putting in work before I've given you a single dollar. Those moments are so special. They're going to create huge brand evangelists for you, so don't automate that out. The other thing is, I've been in a lot of communities. It's very clear the community manager is using workflows and automations to send automatic messages when you onboard to the platform, which is totally fine. We do that too. But then you respond, and there's no follow-up because they don't have that part automated, and they haven't gotten in the habit of actually checking the messages, connecting with the users. So when we were on Circle, which is a community platform, we did no automated messages. I would send a message to every single person after an event saying, thanks for coming to the event, hope you enjoyed it, let me know if you need anything. We sent thousands of messages over the course of 8 weeks, but that pays so many dividends. The people feel actually cared for. You get to establish really great relationships with them. I really enjoy doing it, and they're much more likely to come back if they know this is the kind of white glove experience that they're going to get with your products. The worst thing you can do is have a great automated message like, hey, what's up? What can I help you with? And then they're like, you can help me with this. And then you never actually go and respond. And so that, I think, is the fear of automation, or the downside of automation. Some tactics for events. So many of you are probably running events. We do a ton of virtual events. I've probably done like 300 at this point over the past 2.5 years. And I think we have some pretty good tactics that help, mainly virtual events. The first is to create rituals. I think people are, Pavlov was onto something. I think people are like ritualistic. And part of being comfortable is kind of having a set of habits that get you familiar with the space. You kind of know what to expect. So we start all of our events with basically the same song. It is ingrained in my mind. Like, it's probably bad at this point for me. It's on a playlist called Big Desk Energy. Every time we start a event, we play this song. And so it's kind of associated with Morning Brew learning. We've had many people come and probably do like 10 events. They hear the song, it's a trigger for them. Like, okay, I'm going to this event. It's time to settle in. It's time to lock in for this event. The other thing is expectations. I think one of the most underutilized things is being very clear about how you want people to act in your events. We will explicitly say up top, if you could turn your camera on, that would be great. We've probably all been speakers where everyone has their camera off. It's really weird just talking to like a gray square on Zoom. So let's show some respect for the speaker, turn cameras on, you can see your faces, it's gonna be a lot more fun. We have events where everyone turns their cameras on because we're very clear with our expectations. And then going back to rituals, we will start every event by having people go to the chat as well. So I'll have a question. It can be something as silly as like, where are you from? If it's a course, hey, what was your favorite takeaway from last session? And we have them warm up the chat. One, this demonstrates like, hey, you now know where the chat is. We want you to use it. But two, it does set this expectation. It sets this ritual that as we go through the programming, we want you to use the chat. We'll be in the chat sharing additional resources. It makes it so much more energizing and fun. And so this brings me to the next point. It does go down in the chat and reactions. And this helps the presenter and speaker so much. We often get comments after that we loved speaking to your community because like the chat was on fire. They were talking about their own ideas. They were reacting to what I was saying. I actually felt listened to. I felt heard. And that is amazing. It allows us to have really high speaker attention and get more people to join us to deliver their insights because they actually feel like this is a community worth speaking to. I also think on Zoom, I'm a big fan of like events versus webinars because just seeing people's faces, it feels much more human and much more fun. The second to last piece of advice for events is clarity is kindness. This is maybe is another pet peeve of mine, but when you do a virtual event, oftentimes there'll be some section where there's audience Q&A. And most people I see when they're running a virtual event is like, all right, it's time for questions, so if anyone has a question, either raise your hand or put it in the chat or DM me. And people feel very confused at like what they're supposed to do. And then you're kind of fielding questions from all different sources. We are very clear in our events. We'll say up top and when we get to the Q&A, we're going to go to the Q&A, and here's how you ask a question. You go to Zoom React, and you raise your hand. And for most people, they're comfortable with that. You just need to tell them this is the expectation, and oftentimes they will follow. And then you can see here, like we'll get many people queued up, ready to ask really thoughtful, engaging questions. Clarity, being clear on expectations, is kindness. Even if people will put a question in the chat, I'll DM them and say, would you be comfortable asking this in front of everyone else? 99% of people say yes. If for whatever reason they can't, of course we accommodate, but having that clarity up top, super important. The next thing is throwing an after party. So after events, we will often do breakout rooms, and we'll provide decks or a set of questions that give people a roadmap on how to have a conversation with other attendees. When we think about audience versus community, most events are audience-based events. It's one speaker to many, and we try to make them community in the chat, but this is a great way to let event attendees actually get to know each other. When we do a course like New Manager Bootcamp, we're teaching, but sometimes doing the breakout rooms where new managers get to meet other new managers is the highlight of their experience. They get to talk to people with shared professional challenges, and they feel like they are building their own network, their own community around new managers. Okay, last thing is tactics for creating connection. So one of the things that we do is coffee chats in all of our courses, where we pair a person in our course with another person in our course that we think is going to be a really strong connection. And this is another thing that we try not to scale. We try not to automate. So when we ran our first courses, we'd have 150 people in them. I would spend my Sunday, anyone that signed up for a coffee chat, I would read why they signed up. We had a section like, what are you hoping to get out of this? And I would find someone that they had similar interests, and I would pair them manually. This took up my Sunday. My fantasy football team definitely suffered that year, but it was so powerful. Again, people felt like we were really helping them meet the people they want to meet, and they knew that we were sacrificing for them. That is probably the best thing you can do for a community member, is show like I'm just as invested in this as you, and I'm demonstrating it with where I allocate my time. We do use some automated tools for this, but I actually think doing this manually really sets an incredible precedent, an incredible culture for your community. And if you can be the connecting dot between two people, and they have a great conversation, it leads to a new job, it leads to an investor, it leads to co-founding a company together, whatever it might be, I think you've earned a customer for life. You've really helped them connect the dots. And as your community grows, the better you can get at that, the more effective you're going to be at delivering value to your customers. Another thing is focus groups on demand. I think this is also one of the best things about communities, is you have a relationship with everyone in your digital community, and you can get amazing feedback from them. One of the worst things you can do is, I think, send out a survey and be like, hey, tell me what you thought about this experience, and what can we do better? And I filled out so many surveys in my life, it's a low single-digit percentage of times I've ever heard back. Did you actually read this? Did you actually implement anything I had to say? So every survey we would get, we would also respond to, hey, this is why we're not going to do what you've suggested, because here's our constraints, or this was a really good idea, we're going to try to roll it out. People actually, I think, don't necessarily want you to do everything they've told you to do, but if you respond to a survey, to feedback they've given you with like, hey, thanks, we actually read this, they're like, oh wow, I'm actually like sorry I wrote that. I was maybe a little mean. I just didn't think anyone was going to read it. It's amazing. Like, people just feel heard. And again, these are things that don't scale well. But if you're in the business of community, you have to just come in with the idea that some things aren't going to scale, and we're going to have to do them anyway, because that is what community is all about. And when you do these focus groups, this is a message from someone on Slack in the upper right, like, you get people who really want to test new products for you. And I think one of the best things about us, where we are building new products, is we're talking to our audience, they're giving us ideas on what they want to build, and then we're helping build that product with them. So we'll have focus groups, we'll have kind of like debrief sessions with them on, hey, you wanted a coaching product? That's what we're building. Come build it with us. So now we're building products we know are going to resonate with our audience. And we have people that we know are willing to pay because they told us they wanted this. They helped build us with this. It is going to be the easiest sell you ever make. Then my last piece of advice here is ask for advice, get money twice. If you've ever been involved in startups, people often say, if you ask for money, you get advice. If you ask for advice, you get money twice. And I think this is really key to building anything worth building, is going to your existing audience and not trying to sell them something, but trying to understand, what do you want us to build for you? You know, we have this expertise. We really want to make your life easier. We want to build a product that solves your problems. Help us. And when you ask for their advice, they end up helping you build a product that they're willing to pay for, which, you know, literally is the definition of creating value. And so we have a group of all of our alumni, our Alumni Learning Brew Advisory Board, LBAB. It's the worst acronym of all time, but it's a phenomenal group, and they've helped us build products that they want to see. Those products resonate with the market so much more. So here's a rundown of all the lessons or all the tactics we went through. I hope they were very practical and applicable. And then lastly, if you want to build a community, if you have an audience like a Morning Brew and you're really interested in building a community product, here are the 5 questions I would ask yourself before you go down this road. Community is not a good strategy for every company. First, analyze your existing audience and customer base. 2, what problems are they actually facing, or subgroups of our audience? And you know, why do people actually like your product? Is there a way to parlay that tone into a community product? Then design the community. Again, feature on highlights, or highlight benefits, not features. People want a community to solve a problem, not just gather. And then try to integrate your community into the existing company ecosystem. We've really done a great job of integrating Morning Brew Learning into Morning Brew, and we're continuing to do that. So with that being said, thank you so much for listening, and hopefully some of these tactics were helpful. If you want to connect, Kyle@morningbrew.com. Find me outside. I'm on Twitter and LinkedIn as well. And thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed. Appreciate it.